Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. I've been on a hiatus, as you all know, and I'll talk a little bit about that. For those of you who have followed me for a long time, I don't like to leave you guys in the dark, but sometimes I went back and forth. Should I make a video to tell you guys I'm going on a hiatus? Or should I wait? And I just felt like it honestly, there was just pressing things that I needed to focus on and ground in about. And the last thing I ever want to do is come on here and talk about things. Yes, we're talking about astrology, um, but we're also talking about humanity and how we are as humans and the dynamics that we all go through for our own evolutionary process. And for me, before I get into this Aries full moon, I just wanted to say, I so appreciate the relationships that I have through my work. I appreciate those of you who have reached out in an email to me and you've just expressed, hey, I hope you're doing okay and all of that. And I always write back to you all who send me emails because to me, there's nothing worse than expressing concern and like it's crickets, right? So let me just tell you, I have Venus at 18 degrees Sag. If you are paying attention to the nodes that are transiting in Virgo and Pisces, you're going to know that they have been stuck at 18 degrees through the eclipses. Before the eclipses, they're at 18 degrees right now. And so my Venus has been squaring these transiting nodes, and that's a really big deal. Um, for me, I feel it. That south node, and maybe this can be a teaching thing. The transiting south node is in my fifth house right now. I'm gonna have a nodal return in a few months. And when that happens, it's gonna be the fourth and tenth houses for me. But right now that lunar south node is in my fifth house, and my Venus in the eighth has been squaring it. And so there's something that I've been having to revisit and recover for my own evolutionary intents and purposes in order for me to grow. And interestingly, it's been around my inner child and my creativity and healing through purging dynamics, and how that came about was through my children, the fifth house. I have two kids, most of you guys know this, and I moved from Oklahoma to Massachusetts at the end of May. And it's been very, very busy, and I took time off, and you guys were very gracious with me about that. And I had let you guys know that that was what was going to happen. And then everything was going smooth. I was making videos on here. And then something came up with my youngest child pertaining to school and his education. Very mercurial fifth house dynamics, and me having to listen to my intuition and recover something from the past that I was karmically obligated to do. And I really had to ground in and really, really tap into my intuition um, and my inner listening about this for my son. And anyway, it threw me for a loop. I will say that. And it would take like a whole long video for me to go into it. And I'm not going to, but I just want you to know my kids mean everything to me. Um, and if something comes up with them, my work is going to take a back seat. Um, And I had to really be present so that way I could have discernment around how to move forward. And so that also brought up my own inner child stuff because tis having children, it does that, right? And so I really wanted to make sure that I was doing my own personal work. And I was seeing, I've been seeing clients, but quite frankly, like I love doing videos. These videos have brought in clients for me. They've helped me to connect with you guys, to an audience, um, and help you all. And it's been very healing for me. But this is work that I do that is free. And I don't mind doing it. And I want to make that really clear. But whenever I'm dealing with something very personal and I'm needing to focus on that, doing YouTube videos is going to take a back seat. I will still take clients because there's such a responsibility in that people are paying me. And usually, whenever someone has booked with me, it's because something is going on. And I feel a responsibility to help them. And so I had to really choose, hey, like what how do I work through what I'm needing to work through and help my son work through what he's needing to work through and stay, you know, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and canceling appointments or this, that, and the other. Um, and so I had to choose doing these videos. And so I hope you all understand I hope something like this doesn't happen again, but I just wanted to be vulnerable with you guys because astrology, whenever it's being utilized as a natural law, it's you have to be vulnerable. Um, and I do feel a responsibility. Do I really need to share this with you guys? No, but I also know that you guys care and you express concern and you feel connected, and I feel connected to you, even some of you that I've never seen before. And so I just wanted to let you know that there was just stuff that came up with my son that I really just needed to pay attention to, um and this took a back seat. So without further ado, let's talk about this Aries full moon happening today and for others tomorrow, the 7th. This is a full moon happening at 14 degrees and 8 minutes of Aries. This means that it is ruled by Mars and Scorpio, who is at 10 degrees. And Mars just, it's still in a square to Pluto, but it's coming out of that square, right? I'm sure you've heard other astrologers talk about that square. This is fascinating because now Mercury today has entered the sign of Scorpio and is picking up that energy and is square to Pluto as well. Mercury and Mars are both ruled by this Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So hold on to your nipples. You've got a couple of weeks before Pluto stations direct. We just came out of eclipses. I always feel this is just what I have recognized doing this work is that the first lunation after a eclipse cycle is very potent, right? It's almost like it is whatever came up for you during that eclipse, and it could have felt like a vortex, For other people, sometimes eclipses don't really bring up too much. For others, it really does. But this full moon in an Aries or any lunation that is happening right after the eclipse, it like makes something very apparent. And um, this one is just like that. So keeping in mind that Mercury just entered the sign of Scorpio, it is picking up those energies of that Mars square Pluto energy. This is very telling, Okay. And I'm going to unravel this yarn ball for you guys as I go on. The other thing I want to say is Mars, it's the ruler of this eclipse. It is the ruler of quite a few planets. Mercury, who is squaring Pluto. These are kind of repeating signatures. It is the ruler of the lunar south node in Virgo, and Venus in Virgo, who is now in a new phase conjunction to the south node. Okay. So there's a lot. The other thing is Venus, the ruler of the sun, that is opposing the moon, hence the full moon. Um, yes, she's in a new phase. Venus is in a new phase, but her planetary south node is conjunct that Mars. So lots dealing with relational dynamics and the need to improve. And how do we improve is through creating action. Aries, Mars. Aries, one of the many archetypes, is about starting a brand new cycle. It's initiatory, right? It's wanting to initiate a new cycle. It's something that the soul is absolutely craving, desiring to initiate. It's saying, there's this thing that I want to do, or there's this nudge that is beckoning me to make a choice, to create this action. And yet we have Mars, the ruler of this, conjunct the south node of Venus. Venus is on the lunar south node as well, and it's in a new phase. And then we have this full moon, and a full moon, it speaks to, on the one hand, it's in an opposition to the sun. So the sun is literally like it's illuminating something, right? That something is dealing with the moon, the sign that it's in, Aries, and the sign that the sun is in. And so it's like saying, hey, there's stuff around how we relate to others, sun and Libra, and our autonomy and how we are meant to be in charge of ourselves, moon and Aries, and yet how our relationships can sometimes dictate or negate feeling in charge of ourselves, feeling that we can take an action. It can almost feel like, we've all had this universal experience of our relationships and more thinking of the other, right? Libra. Sometimes it can be more thinking of ourselves and not thinking enough about others. This can be wherever this falls, one or the other can be you, right? And it's not black and white and it's not wrong or right. It just is what it is, and that's what I want to say. But definitely think about where do you fall in that category. And then I want you to think about when we pull in Venus on that lunar south node, ruling that sun, that's illuminating emotional dynamics around needing to take charge of one's own destiny, one's own life, the our identity, right? The moon and Aries. I want you to think about what is it that is coming up around your relationships where you feel like you get a new opportunity to revisit something from the past, an emotional dynamic. This can look like I'm being triggered, something's coming up for me through my relationships, and it's reminding me of X, Y, and Z. Or it can be I didn't make that choice with this person, whoever it may be in my life, and now that same fucking thing is coming up, and what am I going to do this time? Okay, so Venus in that new phase to the lunar south node, old stuff coming up, new choices that we're being called to make. The other dynamic with this is not only is a full moon about illumination, it's also about two other dynamics. It's about opposing something. So throwing it off, that is the opposition. What are we called to oppose? Is it the voices of others and how they've become an inner voice of criticism? Sun in Libra ruled by Venus and Virgo. Is there a crisis going on? Is something being revealed that we didn't understand before that maybe we would denied the Virgo dynamics and then Mercury ruling that and squaring Pluto? It's being made clear where we swept something under the rug or we made excuses for someone or a situation. Is that being confronted so you can oppose that and then take charge, creating an action? Aries. On the other hand, a full moon also speaks to integration. Integration of what? Integration of what have you learned? How can that become wisdom? What, as you know, like as you're understanding what you want to fix, improve, throw off, right? What is it that you can take in? What can be a positive? What can be the teaching of this? Um, these are all really big dynamics going on with this full moon. So as I'm setting the stage for you before we go more into this lunation and the other astrological conversations playing out, I wanted to say this to you. And before I share this chart, I also want you to know that like the moon, the sun, and Jupiter are in a T-square. So the things that I'm talking about, dynamic tension and Jupiter in Cancer ruled by this moon and Aries is what are your emotional truths? Jupiter is about getting to the bottom of what is a truth and what is a belief. And whenever you have denied your inner voice, which can be a dynamic with Venus and Virgo, that action that one needs to take around one's own emotional truths can be very hard. To take charge of one's own life can feel like a crisis, to make a choice about something, to throw it off, to do something different that we know we need to do and it would create improvement, but it feels so foreign. And so Jupiter is in this dynamic tension with the sun and the moon. And it's saying, trust your gut, Cancer, trust your instinct, moon and Aries, and trust your intuition and recover or improve or refine or adjust what you need to in order to connect with that inner voice. Because I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell my kids and the same thing that I have learned. You know you better than anyone else, better than any astrologer, better than any friend, family member, coworker, boss, anyone, any authority or someone you've deemed an authority. You are the authority of yourself and you know you better than anyone else. And that is really reflected and reinstated with Venus in an opposition to Saturn. It's what we call a gibbous opposition. It can evoke a kind of internalized crisis where we're having to take accountability, Saturn, for our choices of where maybe we didn't honor the actual reality of a situation, where maybe we were Pollyanna, maybe we made excuses for ourselves for another, instead of really listening to ourselves. And then it beckons us to throw that dynamic off of where we've given our authority over. And then it's about integrating our own sense of authority and improving upon reconnecting with that inner voice, the inner side of Venus, in order to um, learn about forgiveness of self for maybe where we didn't, and then also to integrate our own sense of authority by trusting ourselves. And again, this moon it's wanting us to create action in order to continue to work through a new evolutionary cycle dealing with our emotional dynamics around being in charge of ourselves and our own healing. No one else is going to heal you. Neptune is in Aries as well. And Neptune is the ruler of that Saturn. It's the ruler of the North Node, and Neptune is also still ruled by Mars, which is a key player in this whole thing. And Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. And what that is reinstating is that we need to really act on our courage to change the way we relate to ourselves by getting to the bottom of our psychological, emotional, and spiritual dynamics, Mars and Scorpio ruling that, in order for the improvement, the Virgo, to occur. So it takes a conscious effort to confront oneself with whatever it is that is going on internally. And this has a lot to do also with Pluto and Aquarius ruling the scorpionic dynamics. Mercury is squaring that Pluto. Pluto is trining its ruler Uranus in Gemini retrograde, who is also ruled by that Mercury. Neptune, Mercury, and Uranus are in what we call a yod. And so there can be an immense amount of tension around our thinking and our conditioning and needing to have faith and to really ground into our instinct. And this is going to take a bottom up approach instead of a top down approach. There is a difference between intellectualizing something and having intelligence about this. We're talking about Uranus Mercury dynamics being pulled into this full moon. What do I mean by this? A top-down approach is so often how we're conditioned, which is Saturn and Pisces. We're revisiting conditioning once again and how it's had effects on our inner relationship and how it's had effects on our relationships to others. Gibbous opposition from Venus to Saturn, okay? Top-down approach is conceptualizing everything, being triggered, and then projecting trauma, Uranus, and the knowledge that came from that experience of the past onto whatever is happening now, and not really seeing it clearly. We're stuck, right? We're not based in actual reality, Pisces, Saturn and Pisces especially. And that Neptune ruling that is like, hey, there's some action that needs to be made here. A top a bottom up approach is where we're looking at all the pieces in a very Virgo like way. And we're acquiring the information and then we are discerning without projecting trauma. We're able to see it more clearly, more based in reality. And that is Mercury and Uranus. Mercury is, intellectualizing, whereas Uranus is the intelligence. And intelligence essentially means I have knowledge, it's wisdom, and I'm going to create action to improve something. I am going to problem solve. That is what intelligence brings, right? Intellectual just means I'm thinking about it and maybe I can connect dots, but I'm probably not going to really be improving too much. It's like when we ruminate on something, but we don't create action. Like you've connected all the dots, you're connecting them, but are you creating an action? And so this really filters in through that yod with Neptune, Mercury, and Uranus. It's also and Mercury is square Pluto, and Pluto is trine Uranus. It's really illuminating what type of intelligence um, we are gaining, what type of wisdom we are gaining from our experiences that could be triggering. But we're being asked to throw off the past way of doing it. Full moon, it's an opposition. And then Venus is in a new phase to the south node, and Mars, the ruler of this full moon, is conjunct Venus's south node. So it's giving us an opportunity. How do you want to create intelligence? Are you just going to intellectualize something, or are you going to create an action? Aries, Mars. Um, what's being exposed to you? This can be also for some people, all of a sudden, some type of manipulation, someone's ulterior motives. It can be revealed to you with this square from Mercury to Pluto. For other people, it can be where all of a sudden you're understanding the motivations behind someone's actions that you might have denied in the past. I had this come up for me, oh my gosh, very recently, where it was like I didn't have to intellectualize anything. It just freely came into my consciousness because I wasn't trying to control it. And that can be where Virgo is moving more into Pisces. But all of a sudden, things that I had wanted to understand for so long about this pain and how it affected me mentally and spiritually and emotionally and psychologically and physically. All of a sudden, the things that I understood just came in, and I realized that I was part of my own suffering because I was denying it. I kept making excuses. And so this is a big dynamic with this full moon is not doing that, creating some type of action where you're not going to deny it. Maybe that means you're going to make a vow to yourself that when you see something, you won't make an excuse for it. That yes, you can give grace, you can have compassion, but sometimes we need to draw a line in the sand, right? To maintain our autonomy. For other people, there's a lot going on because this full moon is balsamic to Cassandra, but yet it's conjunct Cassandra. And Cassandra is in Aries, ruled by that Mars. So as things get exposed internally or externally, for some of us, we are called to really trust our intuition, but for our own healing, to say what it is that we need to say and to release our expectations of an outcome, to actually allow the feedback to present the truth, right? So it's going to take a conscious effort to not deny reality and to say what it is that we need to say to whomever it is, if that is you. And from the feedback you receive, meaning their words or their actions or both, then you take that in and you utilize your own wisdom as intelligence to liberate from whatever it is that that feedback is telling you. And it's really important um, because this full moon is, like I said, it's about being in charge of yourself and your own healing. And that Saturn that's moved back into Pisces is having us revisit dynamics of where we are needing to culminate situations where we weren't self-determined, where we only wanted to see the best, where we made excuses, where we didn't confront the actual reality. And so it's saying there's a soul test here. Are you going to be self-determined to not do what you did before in prior situations, especially dealing with how you honor yourself and how you want to be in relationship to others? Are you going to tap into the higher octave of Neptune, um, the higher octave of Venus, Neptune, and you're going to change the way in which you relate to yourself, which helps you attract different situations? Or are you going to do what you've always done before? What happened during the eclipses? What were you learning? What was coming up for you? What was coming up for you during the Mars square Pluto? What is being revisited now? Where all of a sudden you're having insight. Maybe it's divine intelligence that's bestowing an aha moment on you. This can be uncomfortable for a lot of people right now, especially until Pluto moves direct in a couple of weeks, where you might feel like you're in a liminal space. And what I want to say is that always trust yourself. The anger that we have towards ourselves is always whenever we haven't trusted our own boundaries. And the anger that we experience towards others is whenever our boundaries, whether spoken or not, have been crossed. So, do you need to say something to someone? For others, what action do you need to take to fully let go of something? I personally, I'm not in a relationship. I don't really have anything coming up in my relationships, knock on wood. Um, that is negative. But what I will say is I've been revisiting betrayal and loss and deception and abandonment and manipulations and hidden motivations and confronting where I personally did not want to see the truth and how I participated in my own suffering by doing that. And how, as uncomfortable and humiliating on a personal level, that can be like true having to humble, like, oh, yeah, I wasn't perfect in that situation. I wish I was. A lot of growth happens. And that is part of this Jupiter and that T square. Jupiter is going to magnify the emotional dynamics that we're really needing to get to the bottom of. And that is the scorpionic energy. And through that, we then can mitigate actual crises, Virgo, through creating an Aries action. And it takes one to trust oneself. And that is the nature of this eclipse, is to trust yourself, to take a top up approach, not a bottom down approach, and to really throw off the old structures and the old way of thinking or intellectualizing something and really turning it into intelligence and wisdom. There's lots of signatures here around alchemizing something with the Scorpio, and with Saturn being thrown into this and opposing that Venus in a gibbous phase, it's saying you can be your own alchemist, right? Capricorn, Saturn is the alchemist. Turn something bad into something good. Don't stay in a fragmented state. Be your own hero. Be your own leader. Be your own advocate. That is very much what this full moon is about. It's really taking a stance on being one's own authority. And that comes through courage to take charge of one's own self and the ways in which you desire, that is rooted in compassion and love. And that can also mean where, for some of us, over the next 2 weeks, we feel like we're in a liminal space And so it's about keeping the hope and the faith and trusting that our inner voice will guide us on the direction that we're meant to take. So I hope you all have a really illuminating full moon that promotes a lot of growth and a lot of action and a lot of courage. And just remember, when we make a choice, even if we're afraid to, that is courage. Courage is doing something when you're fucking afraid. And when we do it, it teaches us to trust ourselves and it strengthens our relationship with ourselves. I can trust me. And the beauty in it is that when it comes to natural law, you are always going to receive immediate feedback that that was the correct choice, if it is. And like I said, you know you better than anyone else. Trust you. You've got this. So, thank you for your patience on me getting back to you all. Um, I do want to say if you haven't signed up for the JWG or Jeffrey Wolfgrain Evolutionary Astrology Association online conference that's happening at the end of this month, um, do it. If you want to, I'm lecturing over the asteroid Lucifer. If you go to jwgaea.org, and I'll put this in the description, you can look at what my Lucifer lecture is about. I'm really excited about it. I'm also going to say I will be lecturing for another conference in November. I will speak more about that after I get past this one. And then I have some really cool things coming up in 2026 where I will be traveling and lecturing as well. So even though I wasn't on here, I was working. You can always still book a session if you really need it, even if you don't see me on YouTube. Um, so there's that. And um, thank you all who have expressed concern. I love every single one of you. And I I hope that through creating action and acting on an inner whisper or even a loud scream, metaphorically, promotes a lot of courage, faith, and trust and growth in yourself with this full moon. So until next time, I'll see you later. Thank you.